So I think it's worth thinking here about, we've used a lot of different terminology today. And one of the words we've used is the word black, which I know particularly in Unison has a very specific usage, and it's used quite differently often to a lot of other organisations. So I guess my question here is, and I'll go to Carola first and then Davinder, how are those views formed? So that designation of that term black, the sort of agreement of that as a sort of bit of terminology that the organisation uses, that the union uses, how do you get to that?
This is where the fact that we're a membership organisation and a member-led trade union is central. So it's Unison's Black member self-organised group that has debated, discussed and voted on the terminology we use in Unison, and that is then written into our rule book, and that's the same for all our what we call our self-organised groups. They are the ones who are the first to debate the framework for their group, and then bring that to the rest of the union for endorsement. I think it's a real strong principle in Unison that people listen to the self-organised groups when they're talking about their issues.
Thanks, Carola. Davinder.
I think there is an issue amongst staff because the staff trade unions use the terminology BAME or BME, and I think that's more widely used. So when I have to deliver induction training, it can be quite difficult to explain it and for people to, well, not to explain it necessarily, but for people to understand why I use that terminology. And I suppose it comes down to people should be able to describe themselves how they feel most comfortable. But in order for us to kind of analyze data, we kind of do fall into this tick box type of system, don't we? Because it's our one way of measuring impact and making sure that we're not disadvantaging any groups. So I think it's not ideal, is it? I mean, labels are never ideal, but it's just something that, it's being used in Unison with our members. Not every member of staff likes to be referred to as black, so I think it is a kind of a personal choice. I think there is this kind of ongoing debate, but as far as our staff trade unions are concerned, they either use BAME or BME. So it's just, I suppose, kind of being sensitive to people. I think it just comes down to that, and like we said at the beginning, let people choose how they want to describe themselves or how they want to be referred.
Absolutely. Thanks, Davinder.
Can we also draw a distinction between how people describe themselves and the name of the whole group? Because within Unison Black members, that's not prescribing how individual members self-define, but the group, that's for the group.
I think I just wanted to add that there are very different ways that individuals describe themselves, but as a union and our membership, they have chosen to be called Black members. So if we call them anything else, then that isn't being respectful, because they were at the table. They weren't on the menu. They were at the table at that meeting, at that conference, and that's what they decided. So for us as staff to call our members anything other than Black, then that's not correct going forward, because they've chosen. And if other members sort of want to change that in any way, then they'll do it through the right channels, which is at conference. So as Carola said, we're member led. These members have a voice, they've used their voice, and this is what they've said. So we just have to sort of really be quite respectful about that and sort of acknowledge that this is their decision. Whereas for staff, it is a little bit different. We, you know, as a group, we're called different things in different settings. But it might be worth us maybe choosing, rather than somebody plucking a name out of the air and assigning it to us. It might be worth the staff getting together and saying, maybe we could choose our name.
Absolutely. It's about that. There's using the word when you maybe need to, you know, group data together, or if you're talking about a whole group, and then there's the what feels right for individuals. And both those things can exist at the same time, can't they? It's about, you know, what feels right and what works with the context.
Definitely.
Go on, TJ.
Jumping in. I would say, you know, I quite proudly describe myself as queer, but I know that some people find the word problematic. But it's just as important as hearing when a trans person tells you what their name is, not what their name used to be, what their pronouns are, not what their pronouns used to be. Respecting that it applies to any other group. If that is what the person or the group has chosen to call themselves, you respect it and you use, that's the word you use. It seems, it's pretty basic.
Thanks, TJ. So sort of related to that, I suppose, is our last question, and I'm going to sort of go around everybody here and get you all to sort of share your thoughts. A really common worry in lots and lots of people, you know, in every organisation I connect with, and I know this will be the same across Unison, is that fear of getting it wrong, using the wrong word, slipping up, using the wrong pronouns for somebody, mispronouncing someone's name. There's a lot of people who are really worried about upsetting their colleagues or messing up or sticking their foot in it, and often will end up not saying anything for fear of getting it wrong. So then what you've got is a situation where conversations aren't happening, connections aren't happening, because all that's happening really is just a load of fear and worry that's kind of getting people stuck and not able to move. So I'm going to come to each of you in turn and ask you what your advice is to people who are worried about making these mistakes and how we can navigate them, because they're going to happen, mistakes happen, but it's sort of how do we go about navigating them. So I'm going to go to Carola first.
And I'm very familiar with making mistakes. And I think it's very important not to give yourself, be so covered up with yourself in that situation. You dig a deeper and deeper hole and make the situation more and more excruciating for whoever you're talking to as well as yourself. So, I mean, take a breath, say, oops, you know, that wasn't what I meant to say, or, and just move on. Don't label it, but do have it right. And one tip I picked up from someone who's been on the committee a few years ago, if you're familiar with someone's pronouns and someone else is constantly getting their pronouns wrong, if you just keep using that person's pronouns at every opportunity, then eventually the other person that will get used to it. So they're my thoughts.
Thanks, Carola. Devinda.
I think if you make a mistake and you apologise and it's coming from an authentic place, people are, you know, willing to forgive. So I would just say, keep asking the questions and sometimes find somebody you trust and ask them. That's what I've always done when I'm not sure. I go to somebody I know I can trust and ask them those questions. I wouldn't say maybe out loud to everybody because I don't want to feel like, you know, oh, I should know this. So yeah, go to somebody and people are more than willing to help.
Thanks, Devinda. Alex.
I mean, I would echo that. I think, you know, educate yourself. You know, that's a good first step. I think everybody makes mistakes. We all do. We learn from them. It's a very important process. It's about whether we start repeating them. That's where things become a problem. So if somebody has educated you and you don't take that on board, then, you know, then you may be doing something a little more deliberate, which isn't right. So I just think, as Devinder said, ask, learn, and grow from it, really.
TJ.
I think it all comes down to the intention behind what the person has said. There's a big difference between someone saying something with malice and someone making a mistake. And you can usually tell. Most people out there do not have malice in their heart, you know, but they'll be making a mistake themselves. One thing that I find can be exhausting is the emotional labor of having to correct someone all the time. So if you want to be a good ally, try and pick up on that, as Carola said, and if you can quietly correct, then that can be a real help.
Anna.
I think, as everybody has said, it's about education, it's about learning from your mistakes. Yeah, there is a definitely difference between malice and a mistake, but as Alex said, don't keep repeating it, but worse, try not to justify it. Don't use a terminology and then say, oh, but that's what we used to say 30 years ago, or don't try to have a conversation with somebody and impress on them that what you're saying is correct, when the person who's having the experience is saying to you, no, actually, I don't want to be referred to in that way, or this is, you know, this is not appropriate thing for you to say. Don't try to put your need for being correct above somebody else's feelings.
Thanks, Anna. I guess ultimately it's about humility, isn't it? It's about being humble enough to recognize that I've messed up here, and instead of doubling down, I need to admit it and do better next time. And actually that's okay. It's totally okay to do that. That's the best route to go about it. You know, it's very unlikely you're going to be able to engineer mistakes out of your life, because that's just part of being human. So it's how you deal with them that's the important bit. So we're going to wrap it up there. I'm going to hand over to Carola to give some closing statements.
As I said at the beginning, this is the beginning of the conversation. I'm very much looking forward to seeing where this goes next. At the end of this, you'll find some information about where to find out more, to find some of these and equality resources. But before I turn my microphone off, I wanted to say a big thank you from me to Addie for helping us through this, and to the four of you for being the trusted colleagues that you are, and being such a joy to work with. So thank you.